Boy, the bantamweights are looking interesting right now, right? And I mean, there's a major lesson in this. How do you make the bantamweight division specifically? Throw a dart at the wall, but right now we're talking bantamweights. How would you make the bantamweight division interesting overnight? Well, put them on display. I don't know that I've ever seen this done before. I don't know that it ever has been done before, aside from they did this with the heavyweights one time. There was an all heavyweight main card. 5 fights on the main card, 5 fights were all heavyweights. In fact, it culminated with Junior Dos Santos versus Frank Mir, was for the championship that night. But I remember Roy Nelson fought Verdum. It's just all heavyweights. All of a sudden, heavyweights are on display. All of a sudden, real easy. Let's start matching these guys up, and they're red hot. The same thing happened with the bantamweights. And I don't know in hindsight if the marketing department thought that was going to be a good marketing ploy because it was never advertised as a bantamweight card. But if you go look at it, they're all on display. And there's so many things there, so many moving parts. I mean, Cody Garbrandt, without question, is a star. He has the it factor. Whatever he's doing, something special is happening. The same is true for Sean O'Malley. And I could play this game along the card, but I think that you understand the point. And we're in a very bizarre time as human beings, right? The world's just kind of in a weird place. And you've had some of the bigger names within this sport come out and flex some of their muscle and try to throw it around right now. And largely that's perceived muscle. You can create stars very, very quickly if you put them on display. I have shared a story with you guys a number of times that involves Andrei Arlovsky. And Andre heard the story one time and thought I was insulting him. I don't know how he got to that conclusion. I would not insult the pit bull. But to tell this story absent of Andre would be a miss. And look, it was real simple. It was my debut. 2005. To put that in perspective for you, in 2005, there was 6 shows a year. If you left the UFC, Bellator was not even a name back then, to put in perspective. Strikeforce was not even a name. WEC was running, Pride was running. 1FC was not even a name. I mean, it was a different time in the sport. You had 2. Pride going on over in Japan, they were doing 5 shows a year. The UFC here, they were doing 6. So that was all the MMA you had. If you were released from one of those organizations, could go onto the regional scene and just have UFC vet or Pride vet next to your name on a poster, you were in very high demand. You keep yourself busy and go earn a living doing that, but it was a very rare thing. 2005, at that point in the career, every single show of the 6 a year was either headlined by Randy Couture or by Tito Ortiz. Tito Ortiz had one of his meltdowns, if not his first meltdown, and had left. And Randy had retired. So the UFC is now without the only 2 faces of the organization that they have. What are they going to do? And everybody goes into panic mode. Well, they did such a good job with branding of Andrei Arlovsky. And Andre checked a lot of boxes. He was a good fighter, but he moved really well. I mean, if you just watched him at a distance, he was one of these heavyweights with this footwork. When he was winning fights, he was knocking people out. He had the story, the Belarusian's always a good story. They put a new mouthpiece on him with the fangs. They do some photos in a super fancy suit surrounded by all of his pit bulls. They name him the pit bull. They bring him out, and all of a sudden, not only do they sell out an arena, and I was there, it was Mohegan Sun 2005. Andre fought Paul Bunatello for the world championship. Remember it very clearly. They did such a good job of losing the only 2 stars that they had and creating one essentially overnight that the naysayers were so upset that they began to use a term that was meant to be derogatory, calling the UFC a marketing machine. They put the marketing machine behind it, and that's the only reason that Andre's getting over is because of the marketing machine. Now, if you're in the marketing department, I don't think you could get a bigger compliment than the hardcore fans referring to you as a machine, even if they meant it negatively. But there's a major lesson here because at the time of that fight, Andrei Arlovsky had a record of 8 wins and 4 losses. It was not the most beautiful record with the most beautiful experience. But they matched him up appropriately. They billed him appropriately, and all of a sudden, the whole world bought into it, and they were scared to death of this guy. He then goes out with Paul Buntello. He knocks Paul out, and I believe it was 6 seconds. If I'm wrong, it was 9. They came together, one punch. They all go home. Sold out arena comes to their feet. I mean, Andre is out there. Every heavyweight in the world is either calling him out or saying things like, I'm not ready to call him out, but I do have my eyes on him. Give me a little time, and I'll get in there with him. Point being, you can build a star very, very quickly. And you must always remember the story I just told of Andrei Arlovski, who went from a guy on the card. His previous fight, guys, his previous fight was against Rico Rodriguez. And by the way, that was an undercard match. Now, you look back on that fight, you got Rico, who was the champion of the world, Andre, who went on to be the champion of the world, both in the heavyweights. That's going to be a feature event. But Rico was on his way out of a contract. Again, Andre's batting 8 out of 12. It was one of these things. Ends up on an undercard. Goes all the way, not only to the main event, he goes to the face of the division, he goes to the face of the sport. I share this with you because when you are in a position where you perceive you have the whip hand, you're a fool. You are a fool to the highest of levels. Listen, I do not believe with any part of me that Conor McGregor is going to up and walk away, but I will share with you, if he does, the ability to build a star in record time goes up exponentially. When Conor McGregor walks into the room, he sucks all the air out of the room. He goes to a press conference, every reporter gets there early, waits in line to ask a question, make a clip of it, and send it to their mom and dad and go, look, I made it. There I was at the press conference asking a question directly to Conor McGregor. I mean, it's a very real thing. Great for Conor, bad for everybody else that's up there. You remove Conor McGregor, all of a sudden other people get attention, they become stars. What are you acting like other people don't have that skill set? You acting like other people aren't interesting? You acting like there's no other stars on the roster? I mean, are you that short-sighted? Did you forget the lessons that we learned at the Mohegan Sun in 2005 with Andrei Arlovski? These things can be done very, very quickly. These things can be done even easier if you do what happened Saturday, which is you put an entire division on display, and they can be done exponentially faster if you remove the people that are sucking all the attention out of the room. Do not forget these lessons. They're very relevant right now. I'm with the boys. I'm not with the corporation. I'm with the locker room. But this is a message to the locker room. Do not go out over your skis. This is a partnership. Everybody works together in collaboration. High tide rises all boats, but you try to get out on a dinghy by yourself, you're going to get lost at sea. This is the way that it works, and things move along extremely quickly. It's one of those things where you've got to really check yourself. If things are going well, you dance with the one that brought you. You work with the same coaches, with the same teams. You say yes to the same amount of media. Maybe that's 80%. Maybe you're a guy that says no sometimes. Okay, great. Was it 80%, 90%, or 100%? Whatever it was to get you there, you continue to do. Got to be very careful with these things. I look at Conor McGregor, okay? I look at how great business is doing right now. It's tough to identify why business is doing so well. Is it because there's so many fight fans? Or is it because there's so few sports on TV? I mean, you do have to consider different things. Either way, it's going great. Either way, he's fought one time in 500 days. And there's never been a dip in the market. UFC's trajectory is going up. All of MMA is, there's times that it plateaus, but there's no dips on that graph. If you were to take an athlete who has only participated once in 500 days, oh, and by the way, in the last 2 years, they've set all-time records, and that athlete then believes that they are needed, that they are a necessity, that they are a commodity that cannot be lived without, you would be left to scratch your head and say, how'd you come to that conclusion? Are you good? Are we better with you? Totally different conversations. Totally different. There's no way you could look at Conor, look at the numbers, and deny that that is an asset. That is not my message to you. But my message is to you that the golden rule of show business, which is quite simply the show must and will go on. They're not unprecedented times. Ted Turner jumps into the professional wrestling space. Not only does he go head-to-head with a larger war chest than Vince McMahon had, he goes on the same night in the same time slot. He directly came after Vince to put him out of business, bought every star that Vince had, all of them. All of them. Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Savage, Ultimate Warrior, on down. He bought them all. He bought the referees. He bought cameramen. He bought the writers. He bought the managers, the valets. It was a corporate raid to the highest of levels. Vince had nobody. According to you smart marks out there, there was nobody left, and therefore Vince couldn't survive. Then Vince created somebody called The Rock. Then Vince looked in the locker room and he created somebody called Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then WCW went out of business because they overspent on what they believed was talent as opposed to having the creativity to create new talent. The greats will always find a way. There is a reason that you dreamed one day of getting into the major promotions. Because you saw something. Don't forget what it was you saw. Wasn't the comfort of your couch or the roar of the crowd from the television on your wall when you're at home on your living room. It was the leadership behind that. Do not bet on the horse, bet on the jockey. You knew these principles at one point in your life. At a different point, you forgot them. I'm not scolding you. I am reminding you and I am assuring you. Whatever pound of flesh you think you're going to take, you are only going to cut off your own nose.